Newcastle United look like they have finally started the engine and made some aggressive moves in the transfer window with bids for 3 players. Let's take a look. Hi everybody, welcome to the Toon Review. My name's Paul and this is your latest Newcastle United news, and it is all headlines now from Luke Edwards' original story this morning that Newcastle United have made a triple bid for 3 players who were certainly on the target list, and they are João Pedro, James Trafford and Anthony Elanga. Now, we know that Newcastle United put in a couple of days ago a bid for Elanga. It was rejected out of turn. Newcastle going in with the same amount that they did last season. We all know that that wasn't going to happen. Forest were nowhere going to take that. But a lot of conversation in our live shows was regarding Elanga and whether we would up the bid and whether he was actually worth upping the bid. Was he that fantastic upgrade on the right-hand side to Jacob Murphy? Now, Elanga's got a lot of qualities, don't get me wrong, but is he worth more than 45 million quid? Not many of the supporters in the chat were happy with that, going above 45. But look, we have to now put our faith in Eddie Howe and the rest of the guys who will be signing these players. You know, if Eddie thinks that Elanga is the right-sided answer, then we put our faith in Eddie. It's as simple as that. He's done remarkable things with the players at the club already, and if he can take Elanga to the next level, then it will be well worth signing him. James Trafford, we've also questioned the transfer fee, but then again, Trafford could be Newcastle's number 1 and England's number 1 for years and years to come. So when you think about how much international quality goalkeepers cost, this kid could be it in the future. And of course, João Pedro. Well, João Pedro is a fantastic player. Of course, nearly signed for us before he went to Brighton. It didn't happen. But now, as I'll go on to say in the report, it looks like Pedro's interested. Now, in total, Luke Edwards has reported that the amount that Newcastle United bid in total is 125 million quid in preparation for the Champions League. This is what he had to say. Newcastle United made bids for Brighton forward João Pedro, Burnley goalkeeper James Trafford and Nottingham Forest winger Anthony Elanga. The triple soup is hugely ambitious, an attempt by the club to fill 3 of their 4 positional needs this summer, and would represent a remarkable piece of business if they can pull it off. Now, this is interesting next line here. Telegraph Sport understands that all 3 players are interested in the moves and would love to play for manager Eddie Howe. Listen, we know players talk, right? Players talk, whether it's on international duty or they know each other from previous clubs, etc. Elanga knows Isak. Pedro is good friends with Bruno. Now, that situation there, they will ask about the manager, what's he like to play with, what's his one-to-one management like, his tactics, his training, etc. And obviously, Isak and Bruno, they've been fantastic for Newcastle United. And Eddie Howe, both of them have said what a fantastic manager Eddie is. So they will follow that on to any players that are interested who will speak to them. And I think this is a possibility of happening. I think it's a long way off at the moment. I think there's a lot of negotiation to go on yet, because the club's valuation and Newcastle's valuation seems to be a little bit different. It says, with the lure of Champions League football on Tyneside, Newcastle are seen as a club on the rise and the players' wage demands will not be an issue. So, João Pedro, I wouldn't have thought would be anywhere near the likes of what Bruno and Isak are getting paid. Again, Elanga, probably not. A decent wage for Elanga, absolutely. And certainly for James Trafford as well. Yes, he'll get much more than he was on at Burnley, but I don't think it's really stretching the bank balance. And if we can get those 3 in for decent wages, as well as decent fees, then hopefully this can be the start, and maybe an additional couple of players to come in after these. Now, how the £125 million moves break down, it says, as things stand, there is a gap between the bids made and the current values of the players. But there is growing momentum behind Newcastle's recruitment moves, and things could shift dramatically in the coming days. So again, like I said earlier, there is that little bit of gap between the club's valuation of these players and what Newcastle United valued the players to be at. Certainly, with you talking about Nottingham Forest and the Elanga situation, they think he's more than 45 million quid. How much more? It's been rumoured around 60 that they want for him. Newcastle United won't pay £60 million for Elanga. I'd be absolutely bamboozled and puzzled and annoyed, really, if we paid £60 million for Elanga. And I think a lot of Newcastle United fans would probably question that fee. But if Newcastle United can work with Forest and try to come together to a decent fee for the player, then we'll see what happens with that. Apparently, James Trafford has already agreed personal terms. That was done last season. He decided, of course, to stay at Burnley. However, Manchester City with a sell-on clause, as Elanga does with Manchester United, that's what's probably putting the wages up slightly, that the teams that own the players now are covering that 20% that they owe to Man City and Manchester United respectively. So you can understand those clubs wanting to just cover the backs. And of course, João Pedro, look, Chelsea were interested. That seems to have gone very, very quiet now. Newcastle United's interest was made very, very public a couple of weeks ago. Within a few days, Chelsea also came in and said they were interested and would match the price that Brighton had been asking, which was around, I think, 70 million quid. That's not going to happen by the looks of things. Chelsea, it's gone very, very quiet. Newcastle United have always been, according to the journalists, favourites to sign João Pedro. That's never gone away. It's just a case of, again, working out valuation for the players involved. Now, Newcastle are believed to have verbally discussed bids of around 50 million for Pedro and are willing to pay around the same for Elanga. So Newcastle's offer for Trafford is understood to be around 25 million with add-ons, and negotiations are set to continue with all three targeted clubs currently seeking more money for the players. So that James Trafford one is well low than the 40 million, but of course with add-ons. And I'm sure, Burnley could turn around and say, right, well, 25 million up front, and then so many appearances, and then international appearances will all get added on to that. So that's a deal I can definitely see happening. Newcastle, if they want to go 5 million more for Elanga, yeah, probably, they'll squeeze another 5 million out of us. Any more than that, we should walk away. And João Pedro, if £50 million is what we're valuing and 70 million is what originally Brighton spoke, there's £20 million gap there. That is going to be difficult to negotiate. But that's what football is all about now these days, guys. It's negotiation, it's working out the best deals, and hopefully, if all three players really want to come to Newcastle United, then that helps. That really does help. Because the players want the moves, and I'm sure, hopefully the clubs can work together and come to decent valuations for the players. And, the players, the teams that are selling don't feel like they've been duped anyway, and Newcastle United don't feel like they've overpaid. Because I think that's the problem here. Us fans are worried about Newcastle overpaying for players. When you see Pedro for 70, that's a lot of money. And Elanga for 45 was a lot of money anyway, but certainly north of 50 million, I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. But 50 million, yes, maybe. And James Trafford, that seems really a really good deal. Eddie Howe's made it clear that he would like to have at least 2 new signings in place before the start of pre-season, which of course starts on July the 7th. But there's also a willingness to move on to other names on their shortlist if a compromise on fees cannot be reached. So again, this was reported a few days ago that Newcastle had other targets in mind, of course, from the likes of Keith Downey, etc. And then, yesterday it was said that they were having a transfer summit, all the big players involved in deciding what avenues to go down. Now, if that's decided yesterday that they were going to put these bids in today and then see what they can negotiate with the clubs involved. And if nothing happens with these bids and we cannot get valuations down to where we feel we would pay, then we'll move on. It doesn't say what other players are involved or on the shortlist or on the target list at all. These three have been well known that Newcastle United want these all summer. From the start of the transfer window, these three names were right up there. It says, indeed, if Newcastle reach an agreement with Brighton for Pedro before they agree a fee with Forest for Elanga, it may well mean they drop their interest in the latter and vice versa. So although signing both players is desirable, the situation can evolve quickly if there is progress on one and stagnation on the other. So very interesting that João Pedro, if we don't get Elanga, but we get João Pedro, does that mean that João Pedro's main position for us is going to be on the right-hand side? Is that something João Pedro's interested in, playing there for Newcastle on the right? It seems that way. It is thought Newcastle are working to a soft deadline and will hope to reach a breakthrough on at least one of the transfers before the end of next week. If that does not happen, they will be forced to look at other options. So there you go. You know, they're talking about, again, next week. By the end of next week, I mean, that's into July. You know, I would hope by the end of this month, be really early July, we'd make the signings. Saying that he wants players in before July the 7th, you know, we know how slow Newcastle can be when it turns out that they've agreed with players. It takes a while to get the deal done. So that may well, I don't know. I'm pleased we've made bids. Don't get me wrong. I'm really happy that I can sit here and talk about bids being made. But it depends on the valuations, doesn't it, as to how good the deals actually are for this football club. Of course, Newcastle were interested in Cunha and Mbeumo, and Luke Edwards reports that those fees could well be affecting the current transfer market. So the fact that, you know, Cunha was 65 million or something, and, you know, we know what Mbeumo was, and it's affecting the transfer market because it said it set an artificial benchmark in the market, but Newcastle, who were constrained by PSR rules, will not overpay for players and risk getting into the same sort of trouble they were in last summer. Of course, forced to sell Minte and Anderson. If Newcastle can pull off this triple signing, they will have a squad to be feared next season. The names are not a surprise because obviously we've talked about them before. They've been led to believe that all three players would like to move to St James's Park and now have the hardest obstacle to overcome, which is agreeing a fee. Brighton understood to be willing to sell Pedro, but want to maximise his value. That's fair enough. Forest have always insisted that Elanga is not for sale, but Newcastle will not give up on that. And as for Trafford, there is thought to be a gentleman's agreement in place that means the young goalkeeper can leave this summer, but agreeing a fee is proving problematic. I mean, look, the negotiations for transfer fees goes on all the time. It's constant. But I think sometimes when Newcastle come in, it's a little bit more difficult, isn't it? You know, you see that we've talked about in the past, the Newcastle tax, the PSR situations. It's mad. I mean, he goes on to say a little bit more about the three players involved, but we've spoke about these in detail, haven't we? But what he does say further on in the report is that the arrivals will not guarantee any exits. So current first choice Nick Pope remains an excellent Premier League goalkeeper, but at the age of 33, Newcastle want competition for the jersey next season, especially as they will be playing in 4 competitions. Pope has also had a number of injury problems in recent seasons. Newcastle want more quality cover. It is a risk. Nick Pope is a risk. And we know that he's a risk. As well as he did at the back end of last season, there is parts of his game that are very risky. I would love to see James Trafford. I have to say, I've been a fan of James Trafford for a while. And I do think he'll absolutely flourish at Newcastle United. However, that would leave the problem of centre-back, wouldn't it? Because centre-back is a position that I think everybody has identified that we need to strengthen in as well. Of course, the interest in Mark Gahey remains. And he seems to be still the number one target for Newcastle United to bring in at centre-back. It all depends on the Liverpool situation as well, because Liverpool want him. Gahey wants a lot more first-team football at Liverpool, but there's Konate and Van Dijk there who are the main two. So how much football would he get there? Could we use that as basically a sort of point to give him during negotiations and say, look, you're going to be playing Champions League for us. You will be playing a lot more than what you will be at Liverpool. So can we sway that deal is the question. But there you go. Some positive news today, guys, providing you believe in what Luke Edwards says. But I'm sure he's not going to put a story like this out without actually having some substance to it. So it certainly wants to keep an eye on. We'll cover it again in the live show tonight. If you're watching this on Thursday, 7 o'clock tonight, me, Billy and Stato will be back to go through all of this and any more breaking news that comes around today. If you have enjoyed the video, please do give it a like as usual. And if you're new to the channel, why not subscribe? It is free of charge. We're well on the way now to the grand old 40,000 subscribers. All we ask for is that you hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live show. Check out the website for all your merch, thetoonreview.com. And of course, please keep voting for us in the Football Content Awards 2025. All the details are pinned at the top of the description for this video. What category to put us in, etc. It's all there. So thank you to everybody that's voted so far. But that's it. Leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling about these bids. And we'll see you very soon. Take care.